The crowd at Dodger Stadium buzzed with the familiar excitement of a Los Angeles summer evening. The lights were blindingly white against the deep blue sky. Music pulsed through the loudspeakers, and vendors moved up and down the aisles shouting about popcorn and cold beer. Fans wore jerseys, kids waved foam fingers, and laughter echoed from every corner of the bleachers. It was one of those nights that perfectly captured America's love for baseball, a place where the world's troubles seemed to fade for 9 innings. But that illusion shattered in a matter of seconds when two unexpected figures emerged near the dugout: Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. At first, the crowd thought it was part of the show. Maybe a celebrity cameo, maybe a charity announcement between innings. But as Meghan stepped onto the field with a determined stride and Harry followed close behind, confusion spread like wildfire. Security froze. Cameras swiveled. Then Meghan raised a small microphone, and everything changed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. No one could have predicted that what was supposed to be a routine Dodgers game would erupt into one of the most controversial public spectacles in recent memory. The Duchess of Sussex, standing in the middle of the field under thousands of watchful eyes, began what she called a moment of truth. She spoke about privacy, media abuse, and what she termed royal injustice. The words echoed across the stadium, bouncing off the giant digital screens, slicing through the cheers that quickly turned to murmurs and then to boos. The timing was chaotic, the delivery unapproved, and the message, whatever it was meant to be, got lost in the uproar. Security moved fast, but the damage was done. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Millions watched in disbelief as the once celebrated couple was escorted off the field. By the next morning, a headline swept across every major outlet: Meghan Markle and Prince Harry banned for life from Dodger Stadium. But to truly understand what happened that night, you need to go back to the beginning. This wasn't just an impulsive act of rebellion. It was the culmination of months of mounting tension, frustration, and public fatigue surrounding two people who once symbolized hope, love, and modern change within one of the oldest institutions in the world. Since their royal exit, Meghan and Harry have walked a tightrope between reinvention and controversy. Every move, every interview, every speech seemed to ignite new backlash. What happened at Dodger Stadium was not just a stunt. It was an outburst of everything that had been simmering beneath the surface. A cry for relevance, a demand to be heard, and perhaps a desperate grasp for sympathy from a world that had begun to move on. It started as an ordinary public appearance. Sources close to the couple claimed that they were invited to attend the game as part of a charity initiative involving children's mental health programs. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Cameras caught them smiling, waving to fans, and sharing a kiss on the jumbo screen. The crowd responded warmly at first, but observers later noticed that Meghan seemed restless, checking her phone repeatedly, whispering to Harry between innings. Something was building. According to one eyewitness sitting near the field, Meghan appeared to be holding a small wireless mic in her hand long before she stepped onto the grass. At the time, no one thought much of it. Celebrities often carry mics for live interviews or stadium presentations. But there was no scheduled speech on the Dodgers program that evening, no planned royal message, no coordination with the announcer's booth. That alone should have raised alarms. When the moment came, it was abrupt. Between the fourth and fifth innings, while players switched sides and fans stretched their legs, Meghan walked toward the pitcher's mound. Harry followed, visibly hesitant but unwilling to leave her alone. Stadium staff at first assumed it was a harmless publicity act, but then she began to speak. Her voice, amplified through her own small speaker, was clear and assertive. It's time we talk about justice. It's time we talk about truth. Fans turned to each other, puzzled. She continued, speaking about freedom, privacy, and what the institution took away. At that point, the boos began, not from malice, but from confusion. People hadn't come to hear about royal politics or media injustice. They came for baseball. And yet, here was Meghan Markle, standing in the middle of one of America's most sacred sports arenas, turning a game into a global soapbox. Security moved in quickly. An official from the Dodgers organization approached with visible frustration. Harry reportedly said, "Let her finish," but the man shook his head. "This is not approved. You have to leave the field now." By then, cameras had captured everything. Cell phones lit up the stands like fireflies. Every word was being streamed to social media in real time. The boos grew louder. Harry tried to speak next, attempting to calm the situation, but the noise drowned him out. Within moments, the couple was escorted off the field by security guards while still trying to explain their intentions. It was a spectacle that no PR team could have spun positively. Even fans sympathetic to their cause were left stunned. One witness described it best. It was like watching someone walk into the wrong movie scene and try to rewrite the script. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Social media exploded with divided opinions. Some called it courageous, others called it narcissistic. Hashtags like hashtag Dodgers drama and hashtag Royal Injustice speech began trending within minutes. Late-night hosts mocked the incident, calling it the most awkward interruption in baseball history. But beneath the ridicule was something deeper, a sense that this was the final straw. For years, the couple had been accused of making every public space a stage for their grievances. The Dodgers incident was seen by many as the moment that confirmed those accusations. The stadium, a symbol of American leisure and unity, had become the stage for yet another royal controversy. Behind the scenes, Dodgers executives held an emergency meeting that same night. Sources close to the organization later revealed that they were furious. The team's communications director reportedly said, "They turned our field into a circus." By morning, a statement was released confirming that Meghan and Harry were banned from attending any future games. It was an unprecedented decision. Few celebrities had ever been blacklisted by the Dodgers, let alone members of the British royal family. The message was clear. The stadium was no place for political speeches, no matter who delivered them. What's particularly striking about this story is not just the act itself, but what it reveals about the couple's ongoing struggle for control. Meghan and Harry have long insisted that they left royal life to gain independence, to speak freely, to live authentically. But freedom, as it turns out, has boundaries. The Dodgers incident became a metaphor for that conflict. Their desire to be heard clashing with society's desire for order. Their message, regardless of its intent, was lost in the noise of outrage and disbelief. As reporters swarmed outside the couple's Montecito home the following morning, the same questions echoed across every news outlet. What were they thinking? Why there? Why now? Was it planned or spontaneous? Some insiders suggested that Meghan had been feeling increasingly sidelined in the American media landscape. After a series of failed projects and dwindling public appearances, this might have been her attempt to seize the spotlight again. Others believed it was a genuine emotional outburst, a moment when she simply couldn't hold back her frustration with the system she felt betrayed her. Whatever the reason, it marked another turning point in their already turbulent public journey. The most haunting image from that night came from a fan's shaky phone video. It showed Meghan and Harry being escorted toward the exit tunnel, the crowd roaring in mixed disapproval. Meghan looked defiant, her chin raised, while Harry appeared exhausted, his shoulders slumped. In the background, the announcer tried to regain control of the game, reminding fans to stay seated while we prepare for the next inning. The players stood awkwardly near the dugout, unsure what to do. Baseball paused for a royal drama no one had asked for. The irony is that the speech itself wasn't entirely unreasonable. Meghan spoke about fairness, the pressure of fame, and the pain of being misunderstood, issues that resonate with millions of people. But the problem was timing and setting. It wasn't the message that angered people, it was the intrusion. The world loves a good speech, but not when it hijacks a moment meant for something else. In a society that values both freedom and boundaries, Meghan and Harry had once again crossed an invisible line. As the dust began to settle, the incident left everyone asking, how did it come to this? How did two people who once stood as symbols of compassion and progress end up alienating nearly everyone around them? Was it pride, desperation, or a complete loss of perspective? Perhaps it was all three. The Dodgers ban wasn't just about a baseball field. It was a reflection of how far the royal rebels had fallen from grace. They had turned what could have been a night of unity into yet another global controversy. But the truth is, the story didn't end there. In fact, the Dodgers disaster was only the beginning of a much larger unraveling. Because as the world watched those viral clips on their screens, Meghan and Harry's public image was about to face its biggest test yet. From media backlash to royal reactions, from fan outrage to political consequences, what followed would reshape how the world saw them forever. And that's what this story will uncover. What really happened that night? What drove them to do it? Who tried to stop them? And how one unplanned moment on a baseball field turned into a global symbol of defiance and downfall. Because sometimes, it's not the act itself that defines a person, it's how the world reacts afterward. This is the story of the Dodgers' speech, the band that shook Hollywood, and the couple who couldn't stop fighting their own shadow. The calm before the chaos was deceptive. That evening began like a dream for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The stadium lights shimmered against the California dusk, and the world seemed willing, at least for a moment, to accept them again as glamorous public figures rather than the subjects of ridicule. It was supposed to be a relaxed night, a symbol of how far they had come since their controversial royal exit. After months of media silence and carefully curated appearances, their publicist had arranged this outing as a light-hearted event. No speeches, no controversies, just a couple enjoying America's favorite pastime. Everything, at least in theory, had been planned for normalcy. But normal has never followed Meghan and Harry. When they arrived at Dodger Stadium, cameras snapped furiously. The crowd cheered as the announcer casually mentioned their presence. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us tonight, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Fans waved from nearby seats. The giant screen displayed their smiling faces. Meghan waved elegantly while Harry clapped awkwardly, trying to blend in. For the first 20 minutes, it worked. They chatted with fans, posed for selfies, and seemed genuinely at ease. But those who were close enough to observe could sense something tense beneath the smiles. Meghan's expression flickered between charm and calculation. She appeared to be studying the field, the cameras, the timing of the innings. Every now and then, she would lean toward Harry, whispering in his ear. He would nod or shake his head, his jaw tightening. Something was brewing. The irony was that the couple had been offered the chance to make a short pre-game charity announcement about youth mental health, but had declined. They wanted, according to their team, to avoid overexposure. Yet during the game, Meghan's demeanor shifted. She seemed restless, unsatisfied with being a spectator. There was something about the crowd, the energy, the cameras, that pulled at her. To her, perhaps, this wasn't just a game, it was a stage. For Harry, it was a different story. He looked more reserved, glancing at the players, smiling politely, sipping from a drink. But even he couldn't have predicted what his wife was about to do. Halfway through the fourth inning, as the Dodgers changed pitchers, Meghan leaned in close to Harry and said something that made his head snap toward her. According to a fan sitting nearby, he appeared alarmed, gesturing with his hands in protest. Meghan shook her head, gripping the small purse in her lap. Moments later, she pulled something out. A small wireless microphone, compact enough to fit discreetly in her palm. She checked it, adjusted her hair, and straightened her jacket. A fan recording from several rows up later described the scene as a woman preparing for battle. Harry's face drained of color. He tried to say something, but she was already on her feet. Security noticed movement near their section. A staff member began to approach, but hesitated when he recognized the couple. No one wanted to be the first to question royalty, even in exile. Meghan took advantage of that hesitation. With calm, deliberate steps, she walked down toward the field. Harry followed, half out of duty and half out of disbelief. The announcer was in the middle of reading out the next batter's stats when the crowd suddenly erupted, not in cheers, but in confusion. Two silhouettes appeared on the edge of the field, just past the dugout. It took only seconds for the cameras to zoom in and the big screen to reveal their identities. The murmurs spread like ripples on water. "Is that Meghan Markle?" one fan shouted. Another responded, "What's she doing?" Meghan moved to the pitcher's mound and stood there with a poise that could only come from years in front of cameras. Harry hovered behind her, visibly uncertain. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Meghan lifted the microphone and began to speak. "Sometimes," she said, her voice steady, echoing across the stadium speakers she had hacked into via her device, "we forget that the real battles in life aren't fought on the field, but in the heart." The crowd froze. Players on both teams stared from their positions. Meghan continued, "We came here tonight not to cause disruption, but to remind everyone that fairness, respect, and justice aren't privileges, they're rights. Harry tried to step closer, perhaps to calm her, but she pressed on. For too long, people have been silenced by institutions that value image over humanity. We know what that feels like. It was clear now what this was, an impromptu speech about their own struggles with the royal family, disguised as a message about universal justice. But the crowd wasn't buying it. A wave of uneasy murmurs rolled through the stands. Someone shouted, "Sit down." Another yelled, "Play ball." Meghan's face stiffened. Harry stepped forward, trying to speak into the mic, but his words were drowned out by rising noise. The announcer's voice crackled faintly over the PA system, attempting to cut through, but Meghan's device overpowered it. Security guards near the dugout began moving in, their radios buzzing. Within seconds, the situation had spiraled. The first guard reached Harry, speaking quietly, but Meghan waved him off, her tone turning sharp. "We're almost done," she said. "We just need to finish." The crowd booed louder. The television feed cut to a commercial break. On the field, players stood frozen. A cameraman near third base captured the moment Meghan turned toward the crowd and said, "When you're punished for telling the truth, it says more about the system than it does about you." That line would later explode across social media, quoted and mocked in equal measure. But at that moment, it was pure chaos. Harry tried once more to defuse the situation, putting his hand on Meghan's shoulder and urging her to leave. She resisted for a second, then finally relented as two guards approached. Together, they were guided off the field while the boos echoed around them. One fan shouted, "This isn't your palace." Another threw a paper cup. Meghan didn't look back. Harry, however, did, and the look on his face said everything: regret, frustration, and exhaustion. The game resumed after a 10-minute delay, but the mood had shifted completely. The energy that once filled the stadium was gone, replaced by uneasy laughter and muttered disbelief. The Dodgers won that night, but no one was talking about baseball. They were talking about the Royals, who turned a baseball game into a political stage. Back in the VIP box, team executives were furious. Within minutes, emails were flying between Dodgers management, MLB officials, and their public relations teams. The incident was unprecedented. Never before had public figures of such stature hijacked a live sporting event for personal messaging. The phrase "unauthorized field intrusion" appeared in the first internal memo. By the time the couple's car left the stadium, a decision was already forming. They would not be allowed back. That night, social media became a battlefield. Some sympathized, saying the couple's message about royal injustice had merit. Others were brutal, calling the act tone-deaf and narcissistic. "They can't even sit through 9 innings without making it about themselves," one comment read. A former sports commentator tweeted, "I've seen streakers get more respect than what they just did." Even their supporters struggled to defend them. The setting, the tone, the timing, it all felt wrong. Whatever they had hoped to achieve had backfired spectacularly. Behind closed doors, Harry reportedly begged Meghan to issue an apology. He told her that this was a public relations disaster, that it wasn't the right place or time. But Meghan, according to a source close to their circle, refused. "They booed because they don't understand," she allegedly said. "They never do. Every time we try to speak truth, we're silenced." That single mindset, her belief that every rejection proved her righteousness, would drive much of what followed. The next morning, headlines flooded every major outlet. Photographs of Meghan mid-speech were splashed across tabloids and sports networks alike. The words "banned for life" appeared beside their names. For the Dodgers, it was about maintaining order and image. For Meghan and Harry, it was about symbolism, a reminder that even in freedom, they were being rejected once again. But the question remained: had they been silenced, or had they simply gone too far? What began as a night of leisure ended as a warning shot heard around the world. That was the calm before the chaos, the final moment before everything imploded. The tension that had been quietly brewing between their desire for control and the public's growing exhaustion finally burst into the open. And as the world watched the footage loop endlessly, one truth became clear: Meghan and Harry had crossed a line that no amount of apologies could erase. The unapproved speech became one of the most dissected moments of the year, not only because of its audacity, but because of how deliberately it unfolded. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment outburst, as some tried to claim afterward. It was planned, rehearsed, and executed with the precision of a media operation. To understand the full impact, it's important to trace the details of those few chaotic minutes, because every second of that impromptu speech revealed the couple's state of mind, their growing disconnect from public sentiment, and their inability to gauge how far their credibility had already slipped. When Meghan stepped onto that field with the microphone, she knew what she was doing. According to several eyewitnesses, she didn't hesitate or fumble. Her movements were deliberate, her posture confident, her gaze scanning the crowd like a performer who knew her spotlight had arrived. The microphone wasn't stadium-issued. It was her own, a portable model used for live recordings, reportedly tucked into her purse before the game began. As she reached the pitcher's mound, she turned to Harry, who looked uncertain, almost pleading with his eyes for her to reconsider. But she faced forward, raised the mic, and took a slow breath as the crowd began to quiet down out of sheer confusion. "Good evening, Los Angeles," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the device. "We didn't come here tonight as royals. We came as human beings, people who've seen how systems can fail those who speak out." The words had an air of rehearsed gravitas, a tone that mirrored her public speeches during charity events or interviews. For a moment, a few fans even clapped, assuming this was a scheduled message. But then, as she continued, her words took on a sharper tone. "For years, we've been told to stay silent, to accept what's unfair, to smile while others decide our truth. But silence only protects the powerful. It never protects the honest." That was the spark. Within seconds, murmurs grew louder. The stadium wasn't a place for moral crusades. It was sacred ground for sports, not speeches. The camera operators, uncertain of what to do, briefly panned away. Some security personnel hesitated, waiting for a cue from their supervisors. It was chaos wrapped in politeness. No one wanted to be the one to tackle a duchess. But as the booing started, Meghan's expression hardened. She raised her voice. "The reason we're speaking tonight is because this very reaction, is what happens when you try to tell the truth in public. People want entertainment, not honesty. But we deserve to live free, to raise our children without fear, to exist without being hunted by headlines." The boos intensified. Fans shouted for her to stop. Others began chanting, "Play ball." It was no longer confusion. It was confrontation. Harry stepped forward, clearly anxious. He took the microphone from her hand, but his attempt at control backfired. "We mean no disrespect," he said, his British accent cutting through the noise. "We only wanted to." His words vanished into the roar. Someone yelled, "Go home." Another shouted, "Not your stage." The atmosphere turned volatile. The camera feeds in the control booth cut the live view to a static image of the Dodgers logo, but by then, dozens of phones were recording. The internet would soon see it all. From the press box, a Dodger spokesperson was on the phone with stadium operations. The question wasn't whether to stop them, it was how to do it without creating an international scandal. Eventually, the decision was made. Two senior stadium officials, flanked by security guards, began walking briskly toward the field. One of them, an older man in a navy suit, motioned to the announcer's booth to lower all sound levels. The PA system crackled and faded, leaving only Meghan's voice echoing faintly through her portable mic. The sound of collective discomfort filled the air. It was the kind of silence that made even the players glance at each other in disbelief. The officials approached cautiously. Harry saw them first and lowered the microphone, trying to explain, but Meghan wasn't finished. "No one silences truth," she said into the mic, turning away from them. "You can escort us out, you can boo, you can mock, but what you can't do is deny what's real." One of the officials, visibly irritated, stepped forward and reached out his hand. "Ma'am, you need to stop speaking," he said, his voice picked up faintly by nearby cameras. "You're disrupting a live event." Meghan responded, "This is bigger than baseball." That line, too, would go viral within minutes. The guards moved in, gently but firmly. Harry tried to take her hand, urging her toward the exit. She resisted at first, looking back toward the crowd as if trying to win them over one last time. "One day," she shouted, "you'll understand what we were trying to do." The boos drowned her out. The tension in that moment was unbearable, part disbelief, part embarrassment, and part secondhand shock. As the couple was guided off the field, a few scattered claps broke out. But they weren't in support. They were sarcastic applause, the kind that cuts deeper than insults. Once off the field, Meghan and Harry were led through a service tunnel toward the stadium's private exit. They didn't speak to anyone. Witnesses described Harry's face as pale, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed forward. Meghan walked briskly, muttering under her breath about people not listening. By the time they reached the parking area, their driver was already waiting. As they entered the car, a security officer handed a written notice to one of their aides. It wasn't official yet, but it was clear they would not be welcome back. Meanwhile, in the media box, chaos erupted. Reporters typed furiously, phones buzzed, and social media feeds exploded. Within 10 minutes, videos of the speech flooded Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. One clip, taken by a fan sitting along the third base line, hit over 2 million views in the first hour. The comments section was a war zone. "This is beyond narcissistic," one user wrote. Another countered, "At least they're brave enough to speak out." But most fell somewhere in between. People bewildered that two adults, once among the world's most recognizable figures, had turned a family baseball game into a personal manifesto. Behind the scenes, Dodgers management moved quickly. A late-night emergency meeting convened in the team's media office. The stadium director demanded answers. How had they gotten onto the field? Why hadn't security intercepted them sooner? The head of PR suggested issuing a statement immediately to control the narrative. "If we stay silent, it looks like we approved it," she said. The final consensus was blunt. Meghan and Harry had violated stadium protocol, disrupted a live event, and therefore would be permanently banned. The team's lawyer drafted the initial notice by midnight. It was clear, unemotional, and direct. Effective immediately, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are prohibited from attending future Dodgers events or entering team facilities. At their Montecito home, the couple's team scrambled to respond. A spokesperson drafted a brief statement calling it a misunderstanding. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex attended the game as guests and briefly addressed themes of equality and justice before being interrupted, it read. They did not intend to cause disruption. But the world wasn't interested in explanations. The footage spoke for itself. Late-night talk shows mocked the incident relentlessly. One comedian joked, "Imagine paying $200 a ticket just to get a royal TED Talk in the middle of the fourth inning." Another quipped, "Even the hot dog vendors booed." Still, there were people who defended them, activists, media commentators, and a handful of celebrity allies who claimed Meghan had been unfairly targeted. Yet even among their supporters, there was a growing unease. They had chosen the wrong place, the wrong time, and the wrong audience. Baseball wasn't just a sport. It was an institution of its own, a slice of American identity that didn't take kindly to being turned into a protest stage. The couple's attempt to mix advocacy with entertainment had backfired spectacularly. The most striking part of the entire ordeal wasn't Meghan's words. It was the look on Harry's face as the boos rained down. That moment, frozen in countless screenshots, captured a man caught between loyalty and humiliation. His body language told a story no speech could. Shoulders tense, eyes weary, his expression hovering somewhere between disbelief and resignation. For all the public's criticism of Meghan, there was a growing sympathy for him, a man who seemed perpetually dragged into conflict he no longer wanted. That image would dominate tabloids for weeks, becoming a symbol of the couple's fractured dynamic. What happened on that field wasn't just a disruption, it was an unraveling. It exposed not only their impulsiveness, but their inability to read the room. The audience wasn't hostile until they made it so. The booing didn't begin until the couple forced the spotlight upon themselves. It wasn't just bad timing. It was a public miscalculation of epic proportions. And though the speech itself lasted less than 5 minutes, its repercussions would echo far longer, setting off a chain of events that neither Meghan nor Harry could have predicted. That night, as their car pulled away from Dodger Stadium, the noise of the crowd fading behind them, Meghan turned to Harry. According to one source close to their inner circle, her words were simple but chilling in hindsight. "They'll see one day." "We were right to speak." Harry didn't respond. He simply stared out the window, his reflection flickering against the passing streetlights. The damage was already done. What began as a quest to be heard had turned into yet another reminder that the world had stopped listening. That security's rapid response that night became one of the defining images of the entire fiasco. For the millions who watched the clips online later, it was almost cinematic. The royal couple at the center of a circle of guards, the flashing stadium lights glaring down like interrogation lamps, and the confused hum of the crowd slowly building into chaos. What unfolded in those tense moments wasn't just about removing two uninvited speakers from a baseball field. It was about a system clashing with entitlement, authority colliding with defiance, and a couple who simply didn't know when to stop. Once the crowd realized that Meghan and Harry weren't part of an approved program, the mood shifted instantly. Families who had brought their children for a night of fun watched as the atmosphere thickened with confusion. Security personnel stationed near the dugouts exchanged urgent looks. A man wearing a Dodgers staff badge picked up his radio and muttered, "We've got movement on the field." Unauthorized. The reply came almost immediately. "Confirm who?" He responded, "It's them, the Royals." For a split second, silence filled the channel. Then, the voice on the other end snapped, "Contain it before it escalates." For guards stationed along the first base line began moving toward the pitcher's mound. The first two, trained to handle fan disruptions, hesitated as they realized it wasn't a random streaker or intoxicated spectator. It was Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, standing there with the same confidence they'd once displayed on palace balconies. Meghan continued speaking, her tone calm but commanding. "There comes a point," she said, "when you have to take a stand, no matter the cost." Her voice echoed through the speakers, though faintly. Her personal mic feeding into a small, hidden transmitter was still active. The guards didn't want to physically restrain her, not with thousands of phones pointed their way. They tried the diplomatic approach. "Ma'am," one said, approaching slowly, "we need you to step off the field." She barely glanced at him. "I'm almost finished," she replied. Harry, standing slightly behind her, looked torn. His instincts told him to cooperate, but his loyalty pulled him the other way. Another guard moved in, gesturing toward the dugout. "Sir, this isn't safe. You need to leave the field immediately." Harry nodded slightly, then tried to coax Meghan to follow. "Meg, please," he muttered, his voice barely audible over the growing noise. She ignored him and continued. "If you silence people long enough, you teach them that only chaos gets attention." That line seemed to break something in the crowd. A chorus of boos erupted from every section. Even the players, standing awkwardly near the benches, looked uneasy. The Dodgers coach, unaware of what was happening, leaned toward an official and asked, "Is this a protest?" By now, all field microphones had been cut. The announcer attempted to calm the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We will resume play shortly." But the crowd's energy was beyond control. Laughter, shouting, and jeering filled the air. The first attempt to remove them failed when Meghan stepped back toward the mound, raising the mic again. "You can escort us out, but truth doesn't need permission." The guard nearest her sighed and muttered into his radio, "We're escalating." Within moments, two senior stadium security managers arrived, followed by an LAPD liaison assigned to the event. The presence of law enforcement shifted the tone. Meghan finally lowered the mic, but she still refused to move until she finished her statement. Harry, visibly sweating, reached out to take her hand. "Meg, that's enough," he said firmly. She looked at him for a long second before finally letting the guard guide her toward the sideline. As they were escorted toward the tunnel, fans continued to shout from the stands. Some laughed, others jeered, and a few called out mockingly, "Where's your crown now?" The boos followed them all the way to the edge of the field. Behind them, the game announcer's voice trembled slightly as he tried to restore normalcy. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the bullpen while we prepare to resume the game." The Dodgers mascot made a brief, awkward attempt to lighten the mood, dancing near home plate, but the audience wasn't having it. The damage had been done. Inside the tunnel, the mood turned tense. The couple was surrounded by 6 guards and 2 team officials. Meghan demanded to speak to the stadium manager. One of the guards replied curtly, "Ma'am, that's not going to happen tonight." Harry tried to apologize on her behalf, saying, "We didn't mean to cause any trouble. We just wanted to make a quick point." The official shook his head. "You disrupted a live event in front of 50,000 people. That's not a quick point, sir. Meghan snapped. You can't silence us just because we're telling the truth. The official's patience was gone. This isn't about truth. This is about rules. You broke them. They were escorted to a private hallway near the executive offices, where another team representative was waiting, a middle-aged woman with a clipboard and a practiced smile that hid her anger. She handed Harry a written incident report form. For record purposes, she said tersely, your team will receive formal notice within 24 hours. Harry didn't take the paper. He simply stared at it, then muttered, right. Understood. Meghan, on the other hand, glared at the woman and said, we'll see what the public thinks about this. The representative's reply was quiet but firm. Ma'am, the public already saw it. By the time they were escorted out of the stadium, the entire event had already gone viral. Security footage and fan videos spread across the internet faster than any press release could catch up. Twitter's trending topics included Dodgers Gate, Royal Meltdown, and Banned Royals. The official Dodgers account avoided mentioning them entirely, but sports networks didn't. ESPN's late-night segment called it the most bizarre interruption in modern baseball history. Fox Sports replayed the clip with commentary that bordered on disbelief. I've seen streakers, protesters, even wild animals run across the field, the host joked. But never a duchess with a microphone. The LAPD officers present that night later confirmed that no arrests were made, but the couple had been formally warned. They were escorted out peacefully, one officer told reporters. There was no physical altercation, but there was a clear violation of event protocol. Stadium staff were later instructed to review all future guest procedures, with a new clause added specifically forbidding unauthorized public figures from bringing wireless devices onto the field. The clause became unofficially known among employees as the Markle rule. Back in their car, Meghan's anger boiled over. They humiliated us, she said, staring out the tinted window. All we wanted was to be heard. Harry didn't respond immediately. He was staring at his phone, watching the first viral clips appear online. The sound of the crowd's boos, looping endlessly, filled the silence of the car. When he finally spoke, his tone was flat. We should have left it alone. Meghan turned sharply. Left it alone? That's what they want, for us to stay quiet. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Meg, you turned a baseball game into a press conference. What did you expect? She didn't answer. Meanwhile, in the Dodgers control room, the head of operations debriefed his team. We handled it as best as we could, one guard said. The operations director nodded. You did fine. The problem isn't you, it's them. Another staffer chimed in. Do we have legal standing to ban them? The director replied. Yes, and we'll make sure it sticks. We can't have this happen again. The room fell silent as they watched the replay on a monitor. Meghan's face, illuminated by the stadium lights, froze mid-sentence. The boos thundered beneath her. The director exhaled. That's going to be everywhere by morning. And it was. Within hours, international headlines framed the story as both tragedy and farce. Some British tabloids treated it as a new chapter in the couple's attention-seeking saga. American outlets took a more neutral tone but couldn't resist the absurdity. The Los Angeles Times headline read, Royal interruption at Dodger Stadium. Security steps in. The Daily Mail went further. Markle meltdown in LA. Meghan's speech booed off the field. Even The Guardian described it as an extraordinary display of misplaced activism. Security at the stadium received praise for their professionalism, though insiders later revealed the chaos behind the scenes. The team had been unsure how much force they could legally use against such high-profile figures. If we touched them, we'd be the villains, one guard admitted. If we didn't, they'd keep going. It was lose-lose. Eventually, the team received commendations from both stadium management and the LAPD for resolving the situation without physical confrontation or injury. In retrospect, those tense few minutes between Meghan's final words and her forced exit symbolized a much larger truth. No matter how much power or privilege a person holds, there are still moments when the world pushes back. Security's intervention wasn't just about restoring order to a baseball game. It was about drawing a line that fame could not cross. The stadium belonged to the fans, not to a royal rebellion. And for the first time in years, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were reminded that not every stage is theirs to command. The fallout began before the couple's car even left the stadium parking lot. Reporters had already swarmed the exit, their cameras flashing through tinted glass as the black SUV pulled away. By the time they reached the Pacific Coast Highway, the first headlines were already live on social media feeds. It spread like wildfire, not through royal correspondents or gossip bloggers this time, but through sports journalists, stadium spectators, and bewildered fans who had witnessed the entire scene unfold in real time. Within an hour, hashtags like hashtag Dodgers drama, hashtag royal meltdown, and hashtag unapproved speech were trending across multiple countries. Inside the couple's Montecito home, their communications team was in crisis mode. Meghan's assistant, who had been monitoring social media from her phone, muttered, "It's everywhere already. TMZ has it, Page 6 has it, and CNN's calling for a statement." Harry's team suggested silence. A cooling period to let public outrage burn out. Meghan disagreed. She was pacing across the room, her voice sharp and restless. "We can't let them control the story," she said. "We have to get ahead of it." She demanded that their Archewell PR advisor draft a statement framing the speech as a spontaneous moment of advocacy. The team hesitated. One of them, a veteran of Hollywood crises, warned, "If you say it was advocacy, people will think you hijacked the game for attention. You need to show regret, not justification." Meghan's answer was instant. "I'm not apologizing for speaking the truth." That defiance would soon backfire spectacularly. At Dodgers headquarters, executives gathered for an emergency meeting in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the empty field. The stadium lights were still on, illuminating the mound where Meghan had stood just hours before. The team's president, a composed man who had seen everything from brawls to pitch invasions, looked furious. "This wasn't a protester," he said flatly. "This was a former royal family member, and it happened on our watch." The communications director read a draft of their public statement. "We regret the disruption that occurred during tonight's game. Stadium security responded swiftly and effectively to ensure the safety and enjoyment of our fans. Unauthorized field access is prohibited under team policy." But that wasn't enough. The owner of the Dodgers organization called in from New York, demanding stronger language. "We can't have this turn into a celebrity free-for-all," he said. "If people think they can just walk onto the field to talk about whatever cause they want, this will happen again." After some debate, the team agreed to issue a rare disciplinary measure, a lifetime ban from all Dodgers events for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. The statement went live at 11:42 p.m. Pacific Time, less than 4 hours after the incident. It read, "Effective immediately, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are prohibited from attending any current or future events hosted at Dodger Stadium or affiliated venues. This measure is taken in accordance with our zero-tolerance policy on unapproved field intrusions and to protect the integrity of our fan experience." Within minutes, the announcement made global headlines. Social media exploded with reactions. Some fans applauded the decision, calling it the most American response imaginable. Others accused the team of overreacting. But the majority seemed to agree on one point. The couple had gone too far. A sports columnist wrote, "The Dodgers did what Buckingham Palace never could. They put their foot down." The line was reposted tens of thousands of times. By dawn, every major network had picked up the story. Footage of Meghan and Harry being escorted off the field looped endlessly on television screens from London to Los Angeles. British tabloids ran with it immediately, framing it as yet another humiliation in the couple's self-inflicted exile. The Daily Express headline blared, "Royal rebels humiliated in America." The Sun published side-by-side images of Meghan holding the microphone and the Dodgers band statement, under the caption, "From the palace to the pitch, and out the door." In the United States, reactions were more mixed but equally intense. Talk show hosts had a field day. One comedian joked, "Who knew the Dodgers had better security than Windsor Castle?" Another quipped, "You can't yell at people for privacy and then hijack a baseball game with a megaphone." Even morning shows like Good Morning America covered it, describing it as a collision between celebrity activism and sports tradition. For Meghan and Harry, the impact was devastating. Overnight, their already fragile public reputation took another nosedive. The couple had struggled to maintain their relevance since the decline of their Netflix and Spotify ventures, but this incident made them the punchline of an international spectacle. PR analysts called it one of the worst managed crises in modern celebrity history. One expert told Reuters, "There's a difference between using your platform and commandeering someone else's." They blurred that line again. But while the public saw a couple spiraling, those close to Meghan insisted she viewed the backlash as proof of her righteousness. "She doesn't see it as a mistake," one former aide confided. "She sees it as confirmation that the world wants to silence her." That belief, that every criticism was persecution, became the foundation of her response strategy. 2 days after the ban, Meghan and Harry released a carefully worded statement through their Archwell office. It read, "The Duke and Duchess of Sussex attended the Dodgers game in a personal capacity. During a brief moment of reflection, they sought to share a message of compassion and justice with fans. They regret that their message was misunderstood." The use of the word misunderstood drew immediate ridicule. Columnists pointed out that the statement didn't acknowledge the disruption, the boos, or the official ban. It sounded defensive rather than remorseful. The Los Angeles Times ran an editorial titled, "A Lesson in What Not to Say After You're Booed Off the Field." Behind the scenes, their PR team was divided. Harry wanted to issue an apology, at least privately, to the Dodgers organization. Meghan refused, arguing that apologizing would set a dangerous precedent. "If we apologize for telling the truth," she reportedly told a close friend, "we validate their narrative." That same week, the couple canceled a scheduled charity appearance in Beverly Hills, citing unforeseen scheduling conflicts. But insiders said it was because they feared being booed again. The ripple effects didn't stop there. A planned joint interview with a major American talk show host was quietly postponed. Sponsors and partners began reconsidering their association with the couple's brand. One publicist for a luxury skincare line that had been in talks with Meghan pulled out of negotiations entirely, telling Variety, "We want visibility, not controversy." Even Netflix executives, already frustrated by the couple's lack of commercially successful projects, expressed concern that their public image was becoming toxic. Meanwhile, fans and journalists kept replaying the footage, dissecting every second. Amateur lip readers claimed to have deciphered Meghan's words to Harry before she stepped onto the field. "It's now or never." Others speculated that the speech had been planned as part of a larger media push, a calculated move that went disastrously wrong. Former palace staff, now free to speak more openly, weighed in. One former royal aide told The Telegraph, "Meghan always believed she could control the narrative. She never learned that timing is everything. Even a good message can be ruined if it's delivered the wrong way." While Meghan tried to downplay the incident, Harry reportedly sank into silence. Friends who spoke to him said he was ashamed and exhausted. He had spent the better part of 3 years defending their decisions, but this time, even he couldn't find the words. "He didn't sign up to be booed by thousands of people," said one friend. That hit him hard. The Dodgers organization, however, moved on swiftly. They held a press conference the following day where the team president reiterated their stance. "The Dodgers are a family-friendly venue," he said. "We don't allow unauthorized political or social statements during games, regardless of who delivers them. We stand by our decision." When asked whether the couple could appeal the ban, he replied, "No." The clarity of that response sealed the matter. Meghan and Harry were not just embarrassed. They were officially exiled from one of America's most iconic institutions. It wasn't the monarchy's rejection this time. It was a different kind of banishment, one that cut deeper because it came from a nation they had hoped would embrace them. By the end of the week, public opinion polls showed a sharp decline in their favorability ratings across both the UK and the US. For many, the incident symbolized everything that had gone wrong with their post-royal life: ambition without restraint, activism without tact, and a relentless need for attention that overshadowed any genuine purpose. In the weeks that followed, new stories would emerge, some sympathetic, others brutal, but the Dodgers' debacle marked the beginning of a new chapter in their downfall. Because in the court of public opinion, you can survive scandal, you can survive controversy, but you can never survive becoming a punchline. And that's exactly what Meghan and Harry had become. The public backlash that followed was unlike anything Meghan and Harry had faced since their split from the royal family. In the hours after the Dodgers' official ban went public, the internet became an open battlefield. What began as disbelief quickly evolved into mockery, then fury, and finally, exhaustion. The world had reached its limit with the self-proclaimed royal rebels. The couple's attempt to reclaim moral authority had once again detonated in their hands, and this time, even their most loyal followers struggled to defend them. Within 24 hours, every social platform was ablaze with commentary. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like #BoodRoyals, #Markle Meltdown, and #NoClass@Dodgers trended globally. Clips from the incident, some shot from multiple angles, amassed millions of views. One fan's video, showing the exact moment Meghan was booed, reached 12 million views overnight. The caption read simply, "We came for baseball, not royal therapy." That post alone was shared by celebrities, athletes, and ordinary viewers who couldn't believe what they had witnessed. Even more telling was the reaction from people who had once defended Meghan and Harry. Journalists who previously wrote sympathetically about their struggles began expressing open frustration. A former British correspondent who had interviewed them in Montecito tweeted, "They said they wanted privacy. Now they're interrupting baseball games. Enough already." American outlets joined in, labeling it tone-deaf and performative. The Washington Post ran an op-ed that summed up the public sentiment bluntly. The problem isn't that Meghan and Harry want to speak. It's that they won't stop speaking. The sports community, usually insulated from celebrity politics, couldn't resist weighing in. Dodgers fans flooded forums with anger and disbelief. It wasn't a rally. It wasn't a protest. It was a baseball game, one fan wrote. They hijacked our night for attention. ESPN commentators joked about installing royal-free zones in major stadiums. Meanwhile, MLB officials privately discussed tightening celebrity access policies. The commissioner's office even released a quiet internal memo instructing teams to ensure all celebrity guests are briefed on event boundaries. Talk shows and comedy programs seized the opportunity. Late-night hosts turned the incident into viral monologues. One mocked the scene. "Imagine being so obsessed with injustice that you forget what inning it is." Another quipped, "They fought for freedom from the palace, and now they're fighting for freedom from common sense." The jokes spread faster than any official explanation could. By midweek, their 5-minute speech had become the punchline of 1,000 memes. But beyond the humor was a deeper, more dangerous shift: fatigue. For years, Meghan and Harry had thrived on controversy. Every criticism fed their narrative of persecution. But this time, something was different. People weren't angry, they were tired. Tired of hearing the same grievances. Tired of being told to sympathize. Tired of being asked to applaud drama disguised as activism. Public patience had finally run out. Online polls conducted by major news outlets revealed staggering results. In one survey by YouGov America, 78% of respondents said they disapproved of the couple's actions at Dodger Stadium. In another conducted by Morning Consult, over 60% said they no longer viewed Meghan and Harry as credible advocates for social causes. The message was clear: whatever moral authority they once held had evaporated. The backlash hit harder in Britain, where tabloids went into overdrive. Headlines screamed of disgrace and embarrassment. "Booed in Hollywood," read one. "America turns on the Montecito too," read another. Morning talk shows in London opened with the footage, analyzing every gesture, every facial expression. Panelists laughed as they replayed the moment Meghan tried to speak over the boos. One host remarked dryly, "Even baseball fans have boundaries, apparently." The royal family, predictably, stayed silent, but palace insiders leaked subtle hints of satisfaction. A source told The Times, "There's a sense that this was inevitable. They've been warned for years that their approach would isolate them." Another insider claimed Prince William privately referred to the incident as predictable chaos. That comment made headlines of its own, fueling yet another week of coverage. Meanwhile, in the United States, the backlash took on a different tone, less about royalty and more about behavior. Commentators on CNN and Fox alike criticized the entitlement on display. "This isn't about the monarchy," one analyst said. "It's about two people who believe their message matters more than everyone else's moment." That line resonated widely, repeated in headlines and social media posts across the country. At Archewell headquarters, Meghan was furious. She scrolled through headlines and online comments, muttering to herself, "They're twisting everything," she said. Harry, sitting nearby, avoided eye contact. Their communications director suggested taking a step back from public appearances for a few months. Meghan refused. "If we disappear, they win," she said. "We'll find another platform. We'll tell our side." But her insistence only deepened the rift within their team. One senior PR advisor quit that week, saying privately, "They don't want strategy. They want validation." As public outrage continued, brands quietly began to distance themselves. A streaming service that had once offered a development deal put the project on indefinite hold. Invitations to A-list charity galas dried up. Even celebrity friends stopped returning calls. "No one wants the noise anymore," an entertainment insider told Variety. "They're radioactive." At the same time, the couple's social media accounts became battlegrounds. Meghan's supporters flooded her pages with messages of encouragement, while critics filled comment sections with sarcasm and mockery. On TikTok, creators reenacted the Dodgers incident with exaggerated flair, turning it into viral skits. Some videos racked up millions of likes under captions like, "When your therapy session interrupts the World Series." And yet, even as the storm raged, Meghan refused to back down. She saw herself as misunderstood, a voice of truth punished for speaking out. In one private conversation with a journalist she trusted, she reportedly said, "They're not booing me. They're booing the truth." But the reality was harsher. The public was no longer booing a message, they were booing her. Harry, for his part, appeared increasingly withdrawn. Friends described him as defeated, spending most days avoiding the press. Those close to him said he felt cornered, trapped between defending his wife and recognizing that their public credibility was crumbling. "He's tired," one source said. "He wanted peace in California. Instead, he's stuck in another war." The longer the backlash continued, the clearer it became that this wasn't a passing scandal. It had exposed a shift in how the world viewed the Sussexes. Once symbols of rebellion and independence, they were now seen as cautionary tales, a reminder that fame without restraint becomes self-destruction. Their attempt to reclaim attention had only confirmed their critics' worst accusations, that their activism was self-serving, their causes performative, and their need for validation endless. As the days passed, the memes faded but the damage remained. The Dodgers ban stood firm. Other organizations quietly followed suit, refusing to host them at events. A major awards ceremony rescinded their invitation, citing logistical adjustments. But insiders admitted the truth. No one wanted to risk a similar stunt. In the end, what began as an act of truth-telling became a turning point, a moment when the world collectively decided it had heard enough. The boos that echoed through Dodger Stadium didn't just end a baseball game. They ended an era of indulgence. The couple who once captured hearts with their defiance had finally crossed the line from misunderstood to insufferable. ChatGPT said, "Inside Buckingham Palace, the news of the Dodgers incident landed like a thunderclap. The royal family had long since distanced itself from Meghan and Harry's antics. But this one felt different, louder, more public, and far more embarrassing than any Netflix documentary or talk show confession." A senior courtier, when briefed on the footage, reportedly sighed and said, "Even the Americans have had enough." Across the royal residences, the same sentiment rippled. What had once been a family drama had officially become an international farce. King Charles was said to have been informed early the next morning. An aide entered his private study with a folder of press clippings and a short video cued on an iPad. The king watched in silence as Meghan's voice echoed through the stadium, her words barely audible under the chorus of boos. When the clip ended, Charles reportedly placed the tablet down, rubbed his temples, and muttered, "Good heavens, what on earth were they thinking?" He didn't shout, didn't rage, but those around him knew his tone was one of utter disappointment. "It's one thing to embarrass the crown," a royal insider later said. "It's another to embarrass themselves so thoroughly that even the king feels pity." Queen Camilla's reaction, according to Palace Whispers, was sharper. She's finally booed on her own terms. She is said to have remarked dryly during breakfast with a confidant. Princess, and ever the pragmatist, simply shook her head when briefed.